The grey November sky over Birmingham, England seemed to weep along with the mourners gathered at St Mary's Cemetery in 2004. Heavy clouds hung low over the ancient headstones, casting everything in muted tones that perfectly matched the sombre mood of the day. Among the crowd of roughly 200 people stood families, friends, and fellow metalheads who had come to pay their respects to Marcus Sullivan, a lifelong Black Sabbath fan who had lost his courageous 18-month battle with leukemia at just 26 years old. The funeral service at the nearby chapel had been beautiful but heartbreaking, a celebration of a life cut tragically short, filled with stories of a young man whose passion for heavy metal had not only defined his existence, but had given him strength through the darkest period any human could endure. Marcus had been a music teacher at a local secondary school, known for introducing classical music students to the complex harmonies hidden within heavy metal compositions. His colleagues spoke of his infectious enthusiasm, his ability to find connections between Bach and Black Sabbath, and his unwavering belief that music could heal any wound. Marcus's sister Sarah had spent weeks planning every detail of the service, determined to honor her brother's memory in a way that reflected who he truly was. She'd arranged for his favorite Black Sabbath albums to be played softly as people arrived, creating an atmosphere that was both mournful and celebratory. The funeral program featured lyrics from Planet Caravan and a quote Marcus had once told her during his final weeks. Black Sabbath didn't just make music, they made magic that helped me believe I could face anything, even this. If you're finding this story meaningful so far, please consider leaving a like to show your support for stories about the healing power of music and unexpected acts of kindness. As the graveside service concluded and Father McKenna offered his final blessing over the flower-covered casket, Sarah noticed a commotion at the cemetery's wrought-iron gates. A small convoy of black cars had arrived quietly, and people were beginning to whisper excitedly among themselves. At first, she thought it might be late arrivals. Marcus had touched many lives during his short time on Earth, but she was too absorbed in her overwhelming grief to pay much attention until she heard someone near her gasp audibly and whisper a name that seemed impossible. Walking through the cemetery with quiet dignity, navigating carefully between the weathered headstones, was a figure that made everyone freeze in stunned recognition: Ozzy Osbourne himself. He was accompanied by what appeared to be a small, respectful entourage that included his longtime guitar technician and a woman who might have been his assistant. But it was unmistakably him, the Prince of Darkness, wearing a simple black suit that looked oddly formal on his normally casual frame, his famous long hair pulled back respectfully, and carrying a worn acoustic guitar case that seemed to bear the scars of countless journeys. Sarah felt her knees weaken, and her best friend Emma quickly moved to support her. This couldn't be real. This had to be some kind of grief-induced hallucination. Her brother had been just one fan among millions worldwide. How could Ozzy Osbourne possibly know about Marcus's death, let alone care enough to attend his funeral? The logistics alone seemed impossible. How had he even found out? How had he known where and when the service would be held? The answer lay in a letter that Marcus had written during his final weeks in the hospital, when the doctors had gently explained that the experimental treatments weren't working, that it was time to focus on comfort rather than cure. Too weak to attend the concerts that had once been the highlight of his year, too ill to play his own guitar with the enthusiasm that had once filled his flat with thunderous riffs, he had penned a heartfelt, deeply personal message to his musical hero. In the letter, Marcus had explained how Black Sabbath's music had become his companion throughout the cancer battle. He wrote about listening to Iron Man during the long, nauseating chemotherapy sessions, how the song's themes of transformation and strength had helped him imagine his body as something powerful rather than something betraying him. He described how War Pigs had helped him channel his anger at his illness into something productive. He'd started volunteering with other young cancer patients, teaching them to use music as an outlet for their frustration and fear. Most poignantly, he had written about how Planet Caravan brought him peace on the nights when sleep wouldn't come, when the pain was too intense for rest and his mind raced with fears about leaving his family behind. The song's gentle, otherworldly melody had transported him beyond the sterile hospital walls to a place where suffering didn't exist, where souls could travel freely among the stars. Marcus had never intended to send the letter. It was meant to be a private exercise in gratitude that his therapist, Dr. Patricia Williams, had suggested as a way of processing his feelings about mortality and legacy. Write to someone who has influenced your life, she had advised. Tell them what their work has meant to you. You don't have to send it, but sometimes expressing gratitude can help us find peace. But Sarah had found the letter among Marcus's belongings after he passed, tucked between the pages of a well-worn copy of Black Sabbath's Paranoid album liner notes. Reading her brother's words, his eloquent expression of how music had sustained him through the impossible, had moved her to tears. In her grief, and perhaps guided by some instinct she couldn't explain, she had decided to mail the letter to Ozzy's management company in Los Angeles. She never expected a response. She simply felt that someone should know how profoundly their art had mattered to a dying young man. Somehow, miraculously, the letter had made its way through the layers of management and publicity machinery that typically surrounded major recording artists. It had reached Ozzy himself, who had been deeply moved by Marcus's words. The rock legend had immediately instructed his assistant to find out everything possible about this young man who had written with such grace and gratitude in the face of terminal illness. As Ozzy approached the graveside, the crowd of mourners parted respectfully, creating a natural path through their midst. Many of them were metalheads themselves, friends Marcus had made at concerts, fellow teachers who had discovered their love of heavy music through his enthusiastic introductions, students whose lives he had changed by showing them that music could be both rebellious and beautiful. They watched in awe as their musical hero walked directly toward Marcus's family. He stopped in front of Sarah, who was standing beside the flower-covered casket, tears streaming down her face. Her red-rimmed eyes widened as she realized this impossible moment was actually happening. "You must be Sarah," Ozzy said gently, his distinctive Birmingham accent immediately recognizable, even spoken in hushed, respectful tones. "I got your brother's letter. I'm so very sorry for your loss, love." Sarah could barely speak through her tears and the surreal nature of the situation. "I can't believe you're here." Marcus would have been embarrassed and absolutely thrilled at the same time. Ozzy finished with a sad but knowing smile. From what he wrote in that beautiful letter, he sounds like he was an absolutely amazing young man. The way he wrote about music, about life, about facing death with such dignity, that took real courage. Sarah nodded, unable to form words. Around them, the other mourners watched in respectful silence, many pulling out phones to capture this unprecedented moment while trying to remain respectful of the solemn occasion. Ozzy turned to address the gathered mourners, his voice carrying clearly in the crisp November air. Despite speaking softly, his words reached everyone present, carrying the authority of someone accustomed to commanding attention, but tempered with genuine humility. "I didn't know Marcus personally," he began, "but through his letter, I got to know his heart, his spirit, his incredible strength. He wrote to me about how music had been his companion through the darkest times, how it gave him strength when his body was failing him, how it helped him find meaning and beauty even in the face of terminal illness." The crowd listened in complete silence, hardly believing what they were witnessing. Many of them had known Marcus personally, his colleagues from the school where he taught, his university friends, his fellow musicians from the local metal scene he'd helped nurture. They could see in Ozzy's words a recognition of the Marcus they had known and loved. "Marcus wrote that Black Sabbath helped him feel less alone during his treatment," Ozzy continued, his voice growing stronger as he spoke about the young man who had moved him so deeply. "Well, today, I want to make sure that none of you feel alone in your grief. Music connects us all, binds us together across any distance, and Marcus's love for our music connected him to something bigger than himself, to all of us." Ozzy opened his guitar case with reverent care and pulled out a worn acoustic guitar, the same instrument he'd been carrying for decades, through countless personal struggles and triumphs. The guitar bore the marks of its long service, scratches from guitar picks, worn spots where his hands had rested thousands of times, small dents and dings that told the story of a life lived in music. Marcus's letter mentioned that Planet Caravan brought him peace during his final months, Ozzy said, adjusting the guitar strap and checking the tuning with the practice movements of a lifelong musician. "I'd like to play it for him one last time, and for all of you who loved him. What happened next was nothing short of magical. As Ozzy began the gentle, haunting opening chords of Planet Caravan, the entire cemetery seemed to hold its breath. The song, always one of Black Sabbath's most atmospheric and peaceful tracks, took on new meaning in this context. His voice, usually powerful and commanding on stage, was soft and tender as he sang the lyrics that had comforted Marcus during his final months. The song choice was absolutely perfect. Planet Caravan was one of Black Sabbath's most contemplative, spiritual compositions, a stark contrast to their heavier, more aggressive material. Its lyrics spoke of journeying to distant places, of finding peace beyond the troubles of earthly existence, of souls traveling freely among the stars. As Ozzy sang about sailing across the universe, many in the crowd felt that Marcus was indeed embarking on his final journey to a place without pain, without suffering, without the limitations of a failing body. Sarah wept openly as she listened, remembering with crystal clarity how her brother used to play this exact song during his worst days in the hospital. He'd close his eyes and let the music wash over him, telling her it made him feel like he was traveling somewhere beautiful, somewhere beyond the reach of cancer and chemotherapy and the constant medical monitoring that had dominated his final year. The acoustic arrangement stripped away the electric guitars and driving rhythms of the studio version, leaving only the essential melody and Ozzy's weathered but still powerful voice. It was intimate, personal, as if he were singing directly to Marcus's spirit, wherever it might be now. When Ozzy finished the song, the silence that followed was profound and sacred. It seemed to stretch on forever, filled with the weight of grief and love and the strange comfort that comes from knowing that someone's life has been truly honored. Then, something completely unexpected happened that no one who was present would ever forget. From somewhere in the crowd, a voice began singing the opening lines of Iron Man, not the heavy electric version everyone knew from countless concerts and radio plays, but sung slowly, gently, like a hymn. The voice belonged to James Morrison, one of Marcus's fellow teachers, who had discovered heavy metal through his colleagues' passionate advocacy. Other voices gradually joined in, creating an impromptu chorus of metalheads and family members, teachers and students, all united in their love for Marcus and their appreciation for the music that had meant so much to him. The song that had been Marcus's anthem during chemotherapy was being transformed into something entirely new, a funeral hymn, a celebration of life, a testament to the power of music to bring people together even in their darkest moments. Ozzy smiled through his own tears, tears that many in the crowd noticed and found deeply moving, and began playing along on his acoustic guitar, transforming one of heavy metal's most iconic anthems into something unprecedented. The electric power chords became gentle finger-picking, the driving rhythm became a slow, stately progression, and the aggressive vocals became a communal prayer. As the impromptu performance concluded, with voices trailing off into the November air, Ozzy approached Marcus's casket with slow, deliberate steps. From his pocket, he pulled out a guitar pick, one of his personal picks, worn smooth by countless performances, marked with his distinctive O logo. He placed it carefully among the flowers that covered the casket, a small gesture that carried enormous meaning. "This is for you, Marcus," he said quietly, but loud enough for those nearby to hear. "Thank you for reminding me why we make music in the first place. Thank you for showing me what it really means when someone says our music saved their life." But Ozzy's tribute to Marcus was far from over. Instead of leaving immediately after his performance, he spent nearly 2 hours at the cemetery, moving through the crowd of mourners with genuine warmth and interest. He talked with Marcus's family, learning more about the young man whose letter had moved him so deeply. He heard stories about Marcus's work as a teacher, how he'd revolutionized his school's music program by incorporating heavy metal into classical music education, showing students the complex harmonies and sophisticated compositions hidden beneath the genre's aggressive exterior. Marcus's mother, Patricia, shared how her son had organized charity concerts for cancer research, using his connections in the local metal scene to raise thousands of pounds for the very hospital that had treated him. Even when he was sick, she told Ozzy through her tears, he was thinking about how to help other people facing the same battle. Fellow teachers spoke about Marcus's innovative teaching methods, how he'd used Black Sabbath's War Pigs to teach students about the anti-war movement of the 1960s, how he'd analyzed the band's use of diminished chords to create their signature dark sound. Students, both current and former, shared memories of how Marcus had opened their minds to new possibilities, showing them that musical passion could take many forms. Ozzy listened to each story with genuine interest, asking questions and sharing his own memories of creating the songs that had meant so much to Marcus. He spoke about the writing of Planet Caravan, how it had emerged from a desire to create something beautiful and peaceful amid the darkness of their heavier material. He talked about Iron Man and how the song's themes of transformation had taken on new meaning through Marcus's interpretation. "Your brother understood something that took me years to learn," Ozzy told Sarah before he prepared to leave. "Music isn't just about entertainment or rebellion or shock value. It's about connection, about healing, about giving people hope when everything else seems hopeless." Marcus lived that truth every day of his life, and especially during his final months. Before departing, Ozzy made an announcement that stunned everyone present and would eventually make headlines around the world. He revealed that he would be establishing the Marcus Sullivan Memorial Music Therapy Fund, designed to provide music therapy services to young cancer patients across the UK. The fund would be administered through the hospital where Marcus had been treated, ensuring that other young people facing similar battles would have access to the healing power of music. "Marcus, you wrote that music was his medicine," Ozzy explained to the assembled mourners. "He said it more eloquently than I ever could, that music gave him strength when his body failed, peace when pain kept him awake, and hope when medical treatments offered none. Now we're going to make sure that music can be medicine for others too." The announcement was met with spontaneous applause from the crowd, a sound that seemed somehow appropriate in the cemetery setting. Not celebration of death, but celebration of life, and the possibility that Marcus's legacy would continue to help others. As Ozzy finally prepared to leave, he was approached by Dr. Williams, Marcus's therapist, who had attended the funeral to pay her respects. She thanked him not just for coming, but for showing everyone present what compassion looked like in action. "Marcus talked about you often," she told Ozzy, "not just as a musician, but as someone who had faced his own demons and emerged stronger. He saw in your story proof that people could overcome incredible challenges. Today, you've given all of us that same gift." Now, the story of Ozzy's surprise appearance at Marcus's funeral spread like wildfire through both the metal community and mainstream media. Videos of his acoustic performance, taken by mourners on their phones, went viral within hours, touching millions of people who had never experienced the gentler side of the Prince of Darkness. The image of heavy metal's most notorious figure playing a tender acoustic tribute at a young fan's funeral challenged stereotypes and showed the world that beneath the wild persona was a man capable of profound compassion and genuine human connection. Major news outlets picked up the story, but what struck many observers was how Ozzy refused to be interviewed about his appearance at the funeral. Through his representatives, he made it clear that this wasn't about publicity or image management. It was about honoring a young man who had faced death with remarkable grace and dignity. But perhaps the most unforgettable moment came 6 months later, when Sarah received a package with no return address. Inside, carefully wrapped in tissue paper, was a framed photograph of Marcus that had been taken at his last Black Sabbath concert, just 3 months before his diagnosis. The photo showed him in the front row, arms raised, face glowing with pure joy as he sang along to Iron Man. Attached was a handwritten note in Ozzy's distinctive scrawl. "Sarah, found this in my collection of fan photos from that tour. Thought you should have it." Marcus looked so happy, so alive. Keep his memory alive through music, and know that his spirit lives on in everyone who finds strength in the songs he loved. Thank you for sharing his beautiful letter with me. It changed my life. Ozzy. The Marcus Sullivan Memorial Music Therapy Fund became one of the most successful music-based charities in the UK, eventually expanding internationally and helping thousands of young patients find comfort and strength through music during their treatments. The fund established music therapy programs in children's hospitals across England, provided instruments and lessons for young patients, and sponsored research into the therapeutic applications of music in medical settings. Every year, on the anniversary of Marcus's death, Ozzy would quietly visit St. Mary's Cemetery and play Planet Caravan at Marcus's grave, a private ritual that continued for years. Sometimes he came alone, sometimes with Sharon, but always with his acoustic guitar, and always with the same respectful solemnity that had marked his original appearance at the funeral. These annual visits became something of an open secret in the metal community. Other fans began making their own pilgrimages to Marcus's grave, leaving guitar picks, song lyrics, and flowers. The cemetery groundskeepers reported that Marcus's grave had become one of the most visited sites in the cemetery, with people traveling from across Europe to pay their respects to the young teacher whose story had touched so many hearts. The unforgettable part wasn't just that Ozzy had shown up to a fan's funeral, it was that he had transformed a moment of profound grief into something beautiful, something healing, something that honored not just Marcus's memory, but the power of music to connect human souls across any divide. He had shown that the relationship between artists and fans could transcend the typical boundaries of celebrity and fandom, becoming something deeper and more meaningful. Marcus's story became legendary, not just in the metal community, but among anyone who had ever found solace in music during difficult times. It proved that sometimes the most meaningful moments happen not on grand stages or in sold-out arenas, but in quiet cemeteries where a man with a guitar reminds us that love, music, and human connection transcend even death itself. The story also sparked conversations about the therapeutic value of music, leading to increased funding for music therapy programs and greater recognition of music's role in healing. Medical professionals began citing Marcus's case as an example of how patients could find strength and comfort through their personal musical preferences, leading to more personalized approaches to music therapy in cancer treatment centers. Years later, when journalists and fans asked Ozzy about that November day in Birmingham, his response was always the same. Marcus taught me that being the Prince of Darkness doesn't mean bringing darkness to others. Sometimes it means being the person who lights a candle in someone else's darkness. That day, and every day since, he lit a candle in mine. The guitar pick Ozzy had left on Marcus's casket was later retrieved by the family and became the centerpiece of a small memorial display in the music room at Marcus's school. Students and colleagues would often pause before it, remembering their beloved teacher and the unexpected visit from rock royalty that had transformed a day of mourning into something transcendent. Marcus Sullivan's legacy lived on not just in the music therapy fund that bore his name, but in the countless lives he had touched as a teacher, the students he had inspired to find their own voices through music, and the example he had set of facing life's greatest challenges with grace, dignity, and an unshakable belief in the power of music to heal the human spirit. If this story touched your heart, please consider leaving a like. Music has the power to heal, to connect us, and to honor those we've lost. Sometimes the most powerful performances happen not in concert halls, but in moments of genuine human compassion. Marcus's legacy lives on through the countless lives touched by music therapy, proving that one person's love for music can create ripples of healing that last forever.